All right, so it's leg day today, and I'm actually feeling a little funky, not feeling my best. Probably one of those days I would opt out of training, but we're gonna make this productive. I'm gonna use it as an opportunity to show you some different variations of some leg exercises that you can do at home if you have minimal equipment. You can even bring these into the gym as well. The premise here is keeping the weight off of our shoulders. This is especially helpful for people like myself who have low back issues. So all these, we're going to be putting the weight around our waist. So maybe at the gym, you've seen maybe like a belt squat machine where it has a belt that goes around your waist connected to a lever arm and a cable. And that way you can squat without that weight being on your shoulders or having to hold it in your arms. So we're going to be mimicking that, showing you a couple different variations of that you can bring into your own leg training. So I'm going to do one set of each of these and make it kind of a workout for myself. I don't want to overdo it. It's one thing when you're sick, not feeling well. You know, there's a fine line between pushing yourself, not being a baby about it, and going in there and getting it done, and then maybe pushing it too far where you just weaken your immune system and you end up getting sicker. So I'm going to push that line here today. So most of these movements, I like to use blocks to go ahead and elevate. You're also going to see we're going to be doing some stuff with a bar as well. So it's helpful to be able to get, maybe like 6 inches off the ground, some blocks. I mean, honestly, 2 blocks of wood would work, whatever you've got. So I'm anchoring the band down here to this cross member on the rack. Now, I do have one of the Undersun anchors here. I don't really like anchoring bands directly to equipment. It ends up putting a lot of strain on it. You can do it, but you're going to end up probably weakening your band. That's how bands end up breaking, failing. So this right here, I've got a universal anchor wrapped around this, and then this is the band anchor. It's got a padded side to it. And with that carabiner, I can clip this band in. Now, what we're going to be doing is taking the band, going around the back, just like if it is a belt. So now all that weight is sitting on our hips, and then I'm going to connect this to the anchor there. And this is not a lot of space in between this particular rack. It's kind of a compact system just for being in this room here at my house. But I'm going to use it to my advantage, and I'm actually going to go ahead and press my back against it and use it as a guide. So in a way, it almost becomes like one of those leg presses that slides on the tracks. So coming down here, I'm going to run that anchor through the first loop, through the second loop, get a little lower. Just like that. Connect it on the carabiner. So now all that weight is on my hips. Bringing my feet forward a little bit. Can kind of rest my hands here just for support. Don't really need to. But dropping all the way down till the thighs are parallel with the floor. Pressing straight back up. Make sure to control that rep speed. That feels really good. That's 5. 6. It's like a bear scratching his back on a tree. The nice thing about this, if you start to get tired, you can always use your hands here and just spot yourself slightly. You don't want to overdo it, but kind of help you push through some of those tough reps at the end of a set. Let me get one more. Just like that. The nice thing is, got an element of safety there. It's one challenge, putting a bar on your back. You should be a little bit hesitant to push it to failure unless you have a really good spotter there. Otherwise, it's obviously dangerous. With this, I can push myself more. I don't have the risk, even if I hit failure, there's no risk. Just drop down and unhook the band. But like I said, I can also use that upright to spot myself, help get past that sticking point down low in the rep range. Remember, the hardest part of the rep is down here, from here to there. That's where we have a tendency to stick. Man, I feel like shit. Oh man, it's out of love for you guys that I'm in here doing this. So those days I'd rather be in bed watching Netflix. Okay, so that's one variation. That was actually pretty good resistance. That extra heavy band doubled up like that is a decent amount of resistance. And of course, you can take multiple bands, do the same thing, and you're just going to wrap both of those around your back. And you can create as much resistance as you want. And I know there's this perception with bands that they don't provide enough resistance. That's not true. You can create as much as you want. The one thing you have to be aware of is making sure you have resistance down at the bottom of that range of motion where the band isn't as stretched yet. So for example, with squats, you have to make sure that down here you have tension. That's why I double the bands up. It's not just to make it harder, but if I step into this thing and just use it like this, well, I'd have to step up on a block that's this tall in order to make sure I had tension there at the very beginning of the range of motion. And that's the funny thing about some of the piss poor university studies I've seen done on band training where they compare them to free weights. And then you really read through the study, read through the fine print, and you'll see that they acknowledge that that's the problem, is in a lot of the exercises they did, there wasn't good tension at the beginning of the range of motion. So of course, it's going to look lopsided. So when you're picking band exercises, that's rule number one. Make sure you have good tension throughout the range of motion. Whew, okay. So, off that same theme, there's some other options. It's a very basic belt that you would use for doing bar dips, weighted bar dips, or weighted pull-ups. So depending on what kind of equipment you have at home, like this is something that anybody can own in a home gym. Now, whether you have plates or you have dumbbells, I'm going to show you a way to do both. I don't particularly care for using dumbbells, but I'll show you a relatively safe way to do it. So first thing, I'm going to drag these out. For the exact same reason, we want that plate, we want that tension there at the beginning of the range of motion. So if we squat too low and the plate hits the ground, then we lose tension there. Now you can use that strategically, which is why powerlifters traditionally have used chains a lot. But this is not one of those situations in my opinion. So, let me take this carabiner off real quick. Again, we want to make sure, get this nice and high. That's why I actually stepped off the box for a second. A little more slack than that. I'm not exactly making this look graceful right now. There we go. course, you can stack multiple plates. These are bumper plates, in my opinion, not the best to use for this, because if you use regular plates, they're only half that thick and you can stack more of them on there depending if you need more resistance. But just like we were doing here, it's going to look like a regular squat, nice wide stance. I could probably actually widen these a bit because this thing can turn side to side and we don't really want it hitting those boxes. That makes more sense right about there. Now chest up or out, chin up. We want to drop that butt straight down and back up. So even here at the bottom, you can see that plate is hitting. I'd prefer if it didn't. I'd rather keep constant tension down here at the bottom, but it's not too bad. That's 5. Now I'm slowing down my rep speed, both on this eccentric contraction, your negative, as well as controlled concentric. That extra time under tension is making the exercise a little heavier or harder, bumping up the intensity without having to use as much weight. It's one way to do it. So that's just another button you can push or lever you can pull to increase intensity without always just having to rely on using heavier and heavier weight. See, I would prefer to get a little lower. It hits here. I like to drop just a little bit lower. So if I were to do a second set of these, I would take a little more tension, or sorry, slack out of that chain. All right, there you go. So that is our version using plates. Now, inevitably, someone's going to ask, can I do it with a dumbbell? And the answer is yes. I think it's a little clumsier. Let me show you what that looks like. Whew. You could theoretically wrap the chain around the handle. I don't really recommend it because it can come off of there. There's not really a lot holding that chain in place. So what I do is just using equipment that I already have. These are just ankle straps. So take one of these. Take that ankle strap, cinch it all the way up. Now it's a nice little cradle there. That's not coming off of there. The dumbbell can't slide out. Again, take a lot of that slack out. Like I said, this is a little clumsier, so it's not my favorite. But if you had nothing else, it would work. And so it looked the same way. So, gives you an option, but if you can go pick up some plates, even better. Now, one other thing that you can do, instead of using 45-pound plates, obviously a 45-pound plate has a bigger diameter than a 35-pound plate or a 25. And that's why with old school T-bar rows with a landmine attachment, why a lot of people prefer using 35-pound plates or 25s and stacking more of them, is you go much lower to the floor. So same concept here. All right. So that's with a dumbbell and an ankle attachment. Let me show you another one. we're gonna come over here to the side. I'm not using the box with this one because instead of a squat, we're going to do a split squat. Actually, I'm going to show you two versions. First one is using a cable machine, which, by the way, we can do the exact same thing that we just did with the plate and the dumbbell. Do with a cable machine. Same thing, use the boxes, elevate the feet, and come down here. And now I'm using the cable machine, but instead of doing those, like I said, we're gonna do a variation of a split squat. And if this is annoying to you, you just take the excess, clamp it on there. So, 1 foot forward, close to that anchor point or to the pulley system. Then we would do split squats. And because of the angle of pull here, you see that plane of resistance, it's nice for pushing backwards, and that really activates the hamstrings and glutes a lot with this particular variation. But if you don't have a cable machine at home, I'll show you how to do this with bands. Whew. So like we were doing earlier in our first movement, right around the waist, down here. Same exact thing. I can even, if I wanted to, could use this just as a guide, just for stability purposes. Let's feel pretty good. There you go. Let me do a set of these. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Shit. 10, and just switch. So you see we get a lot of movement at the hip. And that's why this is a little more glute hamstring dominant. I can tell you right now, take 2 of those extra heavy bands and do this. I don't care how strong you are, you're gonna feel them. Nice. Now you notice I wrap it around my hip first and clip it. First time I ever did this, I tried clipping it first and then stepping into it. That was awkward. All right. I'm going to show you one last option here. Depending on what kind of equipment you have at home. Like I said, what if you don't have bands? Which, come on, man, there's no excuse for not having a set of bands. Pretty cheap investment overall when you think of the versatility and effectiveness of them. But You can either use something like this as a landmine attachment, where you don't even need a rack. So it's right in a plate, and you put your bar into it. So that's a pretty easy solution there, depending on what kind of space you have. I happen to have one over here, already attached to the rack. Like I said, you would just need to have a rack. But if you don't, no problemo. And then, that's where our boxes come in again, to be able to elevate our feet. Except I gotta scoot those back past the collar there, so our plate can clear. And I am going to see how this leg, this is not the best squat rack. This one is honestly kind of a piece of crap, but it works for a lot of these other things. I have the lever arms on them, but I'm gonna have to pivot this out to the side a little bit just so I can clear that. And there we go. Give it a nice little bit of space there, just so you don't accidentally hit the boxes. I'm not going to put a bunch of weight on here. We'll just do a little demonstration of how I do them. But however I do them, there's plenty of other ways to do them. Normally I would put a collar on there just to be safe, but we're just going to do this real quick. Our same belt. It's one of the reasons people love landmine attachments. Super versatile. You really can do a lot of crazy stuff with them. So depending on what kind of setup you have at home, it's a great option. And if you're in a commercial gym, most commercial gyms have a landmine attachment in there. So exact same concept. We can go ahead and attach the chain directly to it. It's not going to hurt our bar. You could, if you wanted to, use that same ankle strap, but there's really no need to here. And again, make sure you take that as much slack out of that chain as you can. You saw how that chain slid down, so you can kind of slide it back forward once you're ready to do these. But it's going to be the same exact concept. Oh, okay. Well, clearly my body position wasn't right on that. Well, shit. That just made me look like an asshole. It's where most people would cut that shit out. Be like, oh, fuck, I look like a dumbass. Trying to think. I mean, obviously I could put it out in front here. Let's just try it for a second. See if that solves our problem. You can tell I actually don't do these because I've never had a need to. That's not going to really work either. Here you go. Here's an option. Slide the plate forward a little bit. Come over here closer. See if this works. See this gap here between the plate and the collar? We can try that. I would have to move these boxes forward though, because I'm having to get too far out in front of this. Yep. That's why I typically don't do squats like this. You gotta work out your positioning. I'm gonna stick to it here. You see I got a conundrum here because I can't move the boxes too far forward because I've got the plate. I'm sure someone who does this a lot has a very simple solution for this. We're going to try something real quick. See if this does prevent it from sliding as much. I'm determined now. That's what you got to do. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I would also say that someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to this particular variation, like I said, probably would have some good input as far as our body positioning relative to the bar. So let's play around with this. Let's figure it out. See if we can figure it out on our own. Okay, so that's kind of centered right under my body. Let's see. We got those boxes too far forward now, but it's working. So I need to scoot back a little. Other than the plate hitting our boxes, I think we might actually be onto something here. Hopefully, if nothing else, this has some sort of fucking entertainment value to it, watching me stumble my way through this like an idiot. But it just goes to show, no matter how long you've been doing this shit, which for me is 34 years, there's always something to learn if you're trying new things. And I'm also leaving this in here in this video to show you that it doesn't matter if you feel fucking stupid. Like, I think it's a hang up for some people trying new shit. They're afraid to look dumb. Who gives a fuck? All right, let's try this. See if we're closer. I think we're there. Just the feet. That feels better. All right, so the only change that I would make at this point, I think I would go with a smaller plate, probably a 35-pound plate, so I can drop lower without the plate hitting the floor. I don't know if that was fun, but it was funny. Sometimes you just have to have some humility, you know? So there you go. If you got a bad low back, you don't want to put the weight on your shoulders. If other variations hurt your back, like for example, me personally, even a goblet squat is uncomfortable. Why? It's still forcing you forward. And so you're having to counter that. So all those muscles in your low back are having to fire there just to counterbalance it. So depending on what you got going on, this might be a good variation. One of these anyway for that. And it's also just nice to have some different options, especially when you're working out of a home gym. It can get pretty tiring doing the same move over and over and over. So it's nice to have some different exercises in your arsenal. So give them a try. I can tell you my personal favorite out of everything that we did today was that split squat using the bands. It's easy to set up. It was comfortable. You know, the band wasn't uncomfortable on my back there. The resistance was nice. Felt a super strong contraction in the glutes and hamstrings. So I think that was probably, out of all of them, the one I liked the most. But all these are effective. And even this fucking shit show here, if you work out those kinks, this could be a great exercise for you as well. So, you know, I think the moral of the story is try different things, see what you like, but try it long enough, like I said, to be able to work out those details and, you know, give it a shot. It would have been easy for me to say, oh, fuck it, that was embarrassing, and stop. But what would be the learning lesson in it for me? What would be the learning lesson in it for anybody else who's watching this? So that's it. I'm going to go watch some Netflix.